many of your colleagues traveling with the Secretary over the last couple of days. And that's the first thing I'd like to talk about. I wanted to let you know that we had a great visit by the Secretary of Defense over the last 2 days. For those of you who saw the reporting, the Secretary had informative meetings with several Iraqi senior leaders, also with the Operation Inherent Resolve Commander and other senior leaders. Most importantly, he had a great opportunity to engage with troops on the ground here, who of course are working hard every day to support the Iraqi security forces and to defeat ISIL. I'm going to begin this week with an operational update. Tom, if you would please bring up the map on my screen so I can see it. While that's happening, we continue to attack ISIL in both Syria and Iraq and across the breadth and depth of this battlefield. So I'm going to work our way around the map. I'll start off with the close fights, which are the stars. In Beji, which is star number 2, the ISF continued to conduct clearing operations to eliminate pockets of resistance. The main focus of those clearing operations is now the Makmur Mountains, which is north of Beji and on the other side of the river. Moving on to Sinjar, which is star number 3 on your map. Coalition forces continue to support Peshmerga clearance operations with dynamic airstrikes. In Fallujah, which is star number 4, the ISF have moved several brigade-sized units into positions around the city and have begun operations to isolate enemy forces within that city. In Hit, which is star number 5, we continue to disrupt enemy command and control through airstrikes. The operations between Hit and Haditha, conducted jointly by ISF and Sunni tribal forces, provide additional isolation of Ramadi, Fallujah, and really through the entire Euphrates River Valley. We're calling that the Hit-Haditha corridor. Moving into Syria, in Al-Hal, which is star number 6, the Syrian Democratic Forces are marshaling in preparation to push into Shadadi. Off to the far leftern edge of your map in Mara, which is actually off the map, you might be able to see star number 7 on there. We continue to support vetted Syrian opposition forces with airstrikes. The forces around the Mara line have seen tough fighting over the last week. They've traded punches and terrain with the ISIL fighters in that area. Our deep fights continue to shape the battlefield for future operations. In Dar az-Zor, which is blue circle number 2, we continue disrupting revenue by striking oil infrastructure that supports ISIL's illicit oil activities. A tidal wave 2 attack struck another gas and oil separation plant in this area on December 13th. At the same time, we continue training, equipping, advising, and assisting Iraqi security forces. We've trained and equipped nearly 16,000 ISF troops since the start of building partner capacity operations, and we have more than 4,300 in training this week. This effort continues while the Army is engaged in combat operations, which truly is like building an airplane while in flight. Now, I purposely left Ramadi and northern Iraq for last. There were significant fights in both of these places this week. Both of these fights tell us something about the current status of this overall effort. In each place, ISIL was able to muster an offensive effort, which tells us that they've still got some fight left in them. However, and much more importantly, in each fight, Iraqi forces were able to rebuff ISIL's efforts. I'd like to quickly walk you through both of these fights. In Ramadi, which is star number 1 on your map, ISIL assaulted in the north on Tuesday and were able to temporarily push Iraqi security forces off the Palestine Bridge. And of course, we'd spoken about this bridge for a long time. It's a significant landmark. After seizing the bridge, ISIL sent a VBED truck bomb, supported by infantry, towards the Anbar Ops Center in an effort to retake that key objective. However, the ISF, using U.S.-provided AT-4s, were able to destroy that VBED, kill the infantry in support, and repel the attack. Coalition air power bought time for the ISF to organize a counterattack, and they regained the Palestine Bridge. Towards northern Iraq, which is, it's right along the red edge there. If you see the blue number 1, up from the blue 1, as you can sort of see how that red line moves into yellow. That's the forward line of troops. We call it the flot. The main town, which is not shown on your map, where this fight took place, is Tal Aswad. Now that fight took place along the, thank you, that's perfect. That fight took place along the Kurdish Flot and began at 16:17 hours on Wednesday. And it began with rocket fire on a Peshmerga position near a village called Bashika. That rocket attack kicked off a battalion-sized assault along the Flot that lasted until about 0900 hours yesterday. ISIL forces struck in Nuran, Bashika, and Tal Aswad, and were able to temporarily penetrate the Flot in each of those locations. Coalition aircraft from 5 nations responded and expended nearly 100 precision munitions during the overnight battle. The enemy used several construction vehicles, such as excavators, to breach the berms and defensive emplacements around the Flot, but coalition aircraft managed to destroy every one of these vehicles. Today's video is a compilation from these airstrikes. In the middle of the video, pay particular attention to the vehicle strikes. These are the excavators and construction vehicles that I just mentioned. So with that, Divots, would you please roll the videotape? Thank you, Divots. Now, there's something else I want to point out during all this, and that's while this attack was going on, and while aircraft from 5 coalition nations were able to surge and help the Peshmerga beat this attack back, the coalition was simultaneously attacking ISIL in the heart of their so-called caliphate, which is Raqqa. While this dynamic fight was happening along the Kurdish Flot, there were B-1s striking multiple targets in Raqqa against the headquarters, training camp, and another building. So while ISIL was trying to strike into the flank of the Iraqi security forces, I think it's important to note that we were simultaneously knocking that flanking attack back and striking right into ISIL's heart. So with that, I'll take your questions. I think I saw Bob there, so why don't we start with you, Bob?
Yes. Hello, Steve. Question for you about the effect, if any, of the placement of Russian surface-to-air missiles in Syria, in western Syria. There have been reports that it's had some effect on coalition air operations. Can you explain how, if so, if that's true?
Yeah, I've seen some of those reports, and I'll tell you, they are I think, largely inaccurate. So while there have been, and we've openly discussed the presence of both Russian and Syrian air defense systems in northern Syria, I can tell you that there has not been a significant disruption to our operations. We conduct strikes in northwestern Syria continually. We conducted some manned strikes along the Mara line as recently as 2 days ago, and we did some manned strikes in the Man-Bidge pocket last night. So the answer is no. We're aware of them, and we have the ability to continue our operations unabated. Now, I want to be clear: the Russians do not, their actions do not dictate how we do business, and that is simply not going to happen. We will continue to conduct our operations in support of local ground forces there in Syria.
Well, do you have anything on additional U.S. aircraft going into Incirlik after the F-15s have departed to replace them to some degree?
Well, we don't have any announcements to make now. I'll tell you, Bob, that we have sufficient air power to conduct the operations that we want to conduct. These are rotations, right? So the F-15s that departed earlier in the week, that was planned when they got there. We knew that when they were going to leave. So we'll continue to rotate aircraft. This operation's been going on for over a year now. So there is a requirement to rotate aircraft, and occasionally, a squadron or some other sized unit of aircraft will depart, and maybe it'll be some time before another one's able to get there to replace it.
Thanks.
Mick, I'd like to follow up on Bob's first question. One of the reports that Bob cited said that the U.S. has stopped flying manned air support missions for rebels in a key part of Syria due to Russia's expansion of air defense system, and said that these SA-17 air defense radar systems are painting the U.S. aircraft, and that for now the U.S. seems to be acquiescing to Russia's efforts to keep American manned planes out of the sky. I mean, this report filed was pretty specific, Steve. Are you denying what's in this report here?
I am. The report's incorrect. We are continuing to conduct flights, both manned and unmanned. We're continuing to fly in everywhere. We know exactly where that SA-17 is. It's in Aleppo. But we're continuing to strike everywhere that we want to strike. Simple.
Right.
Yeah, I saw there are a couple of reports lately that the coalition has sort of a depleting stock of ordnance available as the war rages on. Is that correct? Are there concerns that we could be running out of bombs? Is there enough stockpile to continue operations for the next foreseeable future?
We have no concern whatsoever about stockpile of munitions. We have enough munitions to conduct all the operations we need to conduct, as well as maintain a contingency stockage.
Hi, Steve. This is Joe Tabit. I would like to ask you about the secretary meeting with the Prime Minister Abadi this week. How would you describe it, and also how would you describe the level of communications with the Iraqi government. Were you surprised, or was the U.S. military surprised by Abadi's comments that Iraq doesn't welcome U.S. ground troops in Iraq?
Our relations with the Iraqi government are exceptionally good. We talk to the Iraqi senior leadership every day, and we work very closely with them on our common goal, which is the defeat of Daesh. So I don't know that the Prime Minister ever said they didn't welcome U.S. ground forces. Every personnel who's here on the ground is here at the invitation of the Iraqi government. What the Iraqi government has made clear to us, and has made clear publicly, is that they are not interested in any forces coming into Iraq that haven't been invited. And this is something that, of course, we understand, we respect. We have great respect for Iraqi sovereignty and for the Iraqi government.
Just a quick follow-up, Colonel Warren. I mean, I don't know if you agree with many local reportings in Iraq saying that the slow of the fight against ISIL in Iraq, the pace of the fight against ISIL in Iraq is very slow. Would you agree with that?
Slow compared to what?
Slow compared. The Iraqi army has been has been clearing the area in Ramadi for more than 4 or 5 months now, and we're still hearing from you and from other officials that the Iraqi army is still in the preparation stage. My question is, don't you think the retaking Ramadi has taken too long and the pace is going too slow?
The commanding general here for Operation Inherent Resolve is named Lieutenant General McFarland, Sean McFarland. When General McFarland was a colonel, he commanded the unit that was responsible for Ramadi. It took then Colonel McFarland 6 months to bring Ramadi under control. 6 months, and that's using all the might and power of the United States military. And you yourself just now told me, in your opinion, it's taken the Iraqis 4 months. So, no, I don't think it's going slow. I think it is going at the pace that it has to go. Of course, we always want wars to go faster. The faster the war is over, the sooner everyone can get home and we can begin the process of rebuilding. But in this case, I think these claims that the pace is somehow wrong are really made by the uninformed observer.
Anybody else? You guys look like you have more questions in you. Oh, good, we got one. Corey.
Hey, sir, Corey Dickstein. Can you talk a little bit about where they are in the fight in Ramadi? There was something going around on Twitter that ISIS doesn't have the ability to resupply itself. Is that true?
Sure. So what's happened in Ramadi is, I'll give you a quick review. The Iraqi security forces assaulted along 4 axes, along each point of the compass, north, south, east, and west. To the north is the 10th Iraqi Army Division. To the east is a federal police outfit. To the west is the Counterterror Service, or CTS. And to the south, another Iraqi Army Division. I've forgotten the name or the number. Anyway, so all 4 of those axes have, over time, begun to slowly squeeze the city. And in fact, in the south, they've occupied the Al-Tamim district, which you can easily find on any map. It's the largest neighborhood in Ramadi. It is south of the Euphrates River. Then they have now the Iraqi security forces now have Al Tamim secure. We assess it as largely empty of enemy forces. They are still conducting clearing operations. There's booby traps and minefields and IEDs and et cetera that need to be reduced. To the west, the Iraqi security forces have gained control of Camp OIR, another significant objective area along the west. They recently reduced and cleared 34 improvised explosive devices that the enemy had placed in and around Camp OIR. Along the northern axis, there are two key terrain features that the Iraqi army has recently gained control of. The first one is called the Palestine Bridge, and while the bridge is blown, it's a significant landmark there. It's the spot that allowed the Iraqi security forces along the northern axis to link up with the Iraqi security forces along the western axis and close off the final line of supply, the final supply line that was available in Ramadi. The enemy had largely been using the river, the Euphrates River, as their supply line to get men, material, equipment, homemade explosives, weapons, etc., into the city. So now that the Iraqi security forces have seized that Palestine Bridge and control both sides of the riverbank there, they're able to meter the flow of boats that sail south along the Euphrates River. So that's north. Oh, and to the east, the federal police have set up a blocking position about 4 kilometers outside the city, which really isolates Ramadi from Fallujah, preventing the forces in Fallujah from providing any reinforcements. So yes, the city of Ramadi has now been fully isolated, and the Iraqi security forces are beginning to conduct their clearing operations. A lot of people, sometimes I see the word sealed used. I'll tell you, from a military perspective, it is not possible to seal off a city or a border or a forward line of troops or anything like that. So this is a word that you won't hear us ever use. I encourage you not to use it either. Sealing something is impossible. There's still always going to be rat lines, smuggling routes, infiltration points that the enemy is going to be able to use to bring individuals in or out. But what's important is that they aren't able to resupply themselves in any significant numbers, nor are they able to maneuver forces outside of the isolation zone. So hopefully that answers your question.
Colonel Warren, just a quick follow on those points you made. The counterattack on the Palestine Bridge and the operations center, is it your assessment that that was conducted with whatever remains of ISIS forces inside the city, or were they able to somehow penetrate the perimeter with additional forces?
Great question, Jim. Thank you for that. So the attack came from the north. So it came from outside of the Ramadi kind of area. So, and again, to the north of Ramadi, sort of north and a little bit west, this is area that has not yet been cleared. So the attack came from that direction. It came from north to south with infantry and VBIDs. They were able to push the Iraqi security forces off of their defensive position that they built sort of at the bridge head there, and then continue penetrating south using VBIDs and infantry in essentially a combined arms attack. But I'll tell you, the Iraqi security forces impressed us. They performed well. They used the train. This was forces that we've trained using equipment that we've provided. So while the initial attack, and this was kind of a company minus sized attack, difficult to know the exact numbers, while that initial push was able to cause the Iraqi security forces to have to withdraw off the bridge and open up a lane towards the Anbar Ops Center, there was good communications along those internal lines. The Iraqi security forces were able to stop that attack, that VBID supported by infantry that was headed towards the Ops Center. They were able to stop it in its tracks, kill all of the infantry that was supporting the VBIDs, destroy the VBID before it was able to do any damage to the Anbar Ops Center. After that was over, by then we had coalition air on station, we were able to slam the forces that were trying to hold the bridge. The Iraqis who'd been pushed off the bridge were able to reorganize, mount a, if you will, a counterattack, and knock ISIL back off that bridge, killing most of them. So it was a significant number of EKIA. I think it was around 59. I can't remember exactly, but it was a good solid fight. A lot of enemy killed, and all positions restored. So again, I bring all this up. It's important. So again, I just want to reemphasize, since you brought it up, two real points, and the same thing for this fight up north by Tal Aswad. It really brings up 2 points. Point number one, and we can't forget, this is still a war, right? This is still a war, and this enemy does have a little bit of fight left in them, and so we shouldn't be Pollyannish about that. On the other hand, what this tells us also is that the forces that we're aligned with, the Iraqi security forces and CTS, counter-terrorist service forces here in Anbar and in central Iraq, along with the Peshmerga forces up north, these are now becoming solid fighting forces. The Pesh, of course, have always been solid. The Iraqi security forces, it took some time to rebuild them. But what we're seeing is the fruits of that labor, and that they were able to hit back. They absorbed the blow that they received from ISIL. They reorganized. They struck back. And they pushed ISIL back here in this tactical action. They knocked them completely back on their heels. So I think that's an important thing to note.
Louis.
Hey, Colonel Louis with ABC. Can I go back to that attack up north? You said it was a battalion-sized force that conducted that attack. How large of a force numerically are we talking about? And since that sounds like a pretty large force, does that indicate that they have a certain level of freedom of movement in that area? And also the Canadians, Defense Ministry, they are acknowledging that their ground forces helped repel the attack, that they engaged the ISIS forces. Were any American forces also involved on the ground, involved in pushing back the attack?
Thank you for that, Louis. Those are very important questions. Thanks for asking that. So 2 points. I think first the freedom maneuver point. So a battalion size, we estimate maybe 500 total enemy, maybe a little less. Important note, air power alone killed nearly 200 of them, about 187 by last count. So a significant blow to this enemy. And then, of course, ground forces. We don't have a good count yet for how much damage the Pesh were able to inflict on this enemy during the course of this fairly long battle. But we know it was significant. It was, again, enough to knock them completely back out of the flat. So, yes, if you look at that location, that part of the flat, again, the south of the flat is a military term, forward line of troops, FLOT, flat. South of the flat is enemy-controlled territory, and they are able to move. In this case, they used some infiltration tactics, right? Moving in small groups to assault positions, and then being able to, conduct kind of a simultaneous assault along 4 different points along the flat there. So yeah, they do have some freedom of maneuver there, as expected. It's territory that we don't yet control. That said, I'll tell you, it came, most of these forces came really out of Mosul, right, which is kind of their center of gravity here in Iraq. And if that's the best that they can muster, it doesn't look good for them. If this is the most significant attack that the enemy is able to mount, really since Ramadi. And again, if this is all they've got, then things are going to begin to get worse and worse for this enemy. Forces, yeah. So the Canadians have discussed the fact that some Canadian SOF that were a little bit forward in around Bashika, they were at a headquarters behind the flat, behind the enemy lines, but the enemy was able to push through fairly rapidly those enemy lines, and the Canadians were forced to engage with mortars, with mortar fire in an effort to help protect their partner forces. So no American forces exchanged any fire during the course of this fight. As you know, there are Americans advising and assisting at the division level with the Peshmerga. But in this case, there were no Americans other than in the sky.
So, Steve, Dave Martin, how close to the front lines were the American advisors?
This didn't happen anywhere really near any Americans. So no, I mean, in this sector, I don't think there's any Americans. There may be some way back, like 25, 30 kilometers, but this sector, this portion of the flight, not an American presence there.
Anybody else? Mick?
Could you run down a list of what aircraft were specifically used in that effort to turn back the assault by ISIS?
Well, it was manned and unmanned, right? So fighters, bombers, and drones. I didn't bring a list with me. Unfortunately, it was 5 different coalitions. So there was a wide variety. That might be something we can get. I don't have it. Let me just look at my list here. Yeah, Jim. Unfortunately, I don't have that exact piece of information. But again, it was so five coalition nations. 100 munitions expended, all precision, and it was fighters, it was bombers, and it was drones as well.
Okay.
Louis,
Can I ask you a follow-up, Steve? You said that the Canadians were at the headquarters. How far back was that headquarters from the FLOT? I mean, typically headquarters are not that close to a front line, are they not?
They're not, and this was a penetration. So this headquarters where the Canadians were, I don't want to give you a bad number. I'm gonna kind of ballpark it here, looking at this map, to be about 5 miles, maybe 4 or 5 miles, a little bit less than 10 clicks.
Steve, thank you very much. Do you have anything we forgot to ask you? Anything we should have asked you?
No, it was great talking to you. No, it was great. It was great seeing your colleagues that were here, and I know a couple others are here tonight, so I'm going to go have dinner with them. So take care, and we'll see you next week.
Happy holidays, Steve. Thank you for your service. Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays.